Hello, welcome back to Diary of a Creator. Today I am in New Zealand. You've probably noticed my background has been shifting quite a bit recently. I have been moving around Bali and now I'm in New Zealand. I finally have winter upon me, if you can't tell by my attire. It's fine, it's just a little bit different than the 30-degree heat that I got used to in Bali. So today I wanted to talk about fears and blocks because ultimately this is what stops us from going for and getting what we want. And I want to carry on from the theme that I spoke about in a couple of videos before, where we are innately already vibrating at the frequency of what we want. It's about the blocks that almost disrupt that frequency for us. And so we really need to unpick our fears and the blocks that ultimately come from it. And I want to really dive into what I would call the dichotomy of them because, and hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to see just how illogical the fears are that we have. And to start with, on the first thing, is that the fear that we have. So, whatever your fear is, I'm going to hone into fear of failure and fear of rejection in this video, just because these ones are very topical for anyone moving through this journey. Obviously, there's more than this, but I'm just going to use these to unpick. But when it comes to what you're actually fearing, it's not the fear itself that you're afraid of. So it's not failing that you're afraid of. It's actually the meaning that you attach to what failure means about you. That is what you are afraid of. And so when we unpick that in our behavior, it becomes easier to identify why we avoid certain things. And so it will be, so fear of failure obviously stops a lot of people where they just don't want to be exposed for that. And when we're going on this journey, unfortunately, you are going to fail. So this one is one that people really need to come head up against. But the thing is, if you think of failure just in and on its own, you probably fail in many different areas of life. And it might not mean anything to you, and you can pick yourself up and try again. The area where you will be getting blocked and stopped is because you have placed some form of meaning about who you are, so some sort of value or validation or acknowledgement around it. So I'll take myself as an example. I suck at sport. Okay, I don't suck, like I'm average. But I don't really love being average if it was in another thing. I don't care that I'm average in sport. I still give it a go. I played a game of paddle a few weeks ago and I literally lost every single set of every single game and I still had fun. So that's a failure, but it didn't mean anything about me as a person. So I was able to, there was no emotional charge in it. In fact, just I was like, okay, cool, I'm, pretty bad at this. I still had fun. I was still present. I still enjoyed the game, even though I wasn't very good at it, because the failure in that instance meant absolutely nothing about me as a person. So I didn't take it on. If I was to fail in business, or even honestly throughout my career, it was that has charge for me. Why does it have charge for me? Because I have been grown up and raised to believe within myself that my source of validation and acknowledgement and acceptance from my parents and caregivers is how well I perform academically. So, very much my validation and my identity has always been placed on what I achieve and being smart. Now, if I am to fail in any of that, that has a charge to it. So there was a lot of failures that I hit around like January, February in the business. They absolutely derailed me because I'd placed meaning on it. And there is still some of a charge, and you just got to witness it in yourself, because the fear of failure will often come from a past experience where you might have felt it before, and then it's almost like you don't want to repeat that feeling ever again. And so you will go and avoid anything where you've given it a go, you failed. That's likely something that you're going to avoid. Or you might have just completely built it up in your head as well. And under fear of failure, there's lots of beliefs going on underneath it, but we're not really going to go into that today. I want to kind of keep it at the fear level. We then got rejection as an example. So the funny thing, and I touched on this in this 2 videos prior, when we have a fear of rejection, we're seeking our validation through other people. So we're seeking them to validate us as a person. And so in the same way as a fear of failure, a person will just avoid trying altogether. That is the typical response if you're not conscious. Fear of failure will stop you from trying at all. A fear of rejection will make you change who you are and how you present yourself. So if you take it in terms of this path, it might be standing out into a completely different way of living that people aren't really familiar with, or different characteristics that you might have been hiding all this time, but they start to kind of come out. And there's a rejection or a fear of being judged for that. But our strategy for that is to adapt who we are to fit in. And again, with the meaning that we attach. So say if you were to be rejected by someone who you deem to have no, I don't want to say value, but in your eyes, they're not an important person. They could reject you and they could judge you, and it will give you absolutely no reaction or no charge. If someone was to reject you who you did deem to be important, who their opinion mattered to you, that's where the charge comes. So as I was saying, it's not actually what you're fearing that it is about. It's what you've made the rejection or the failure mean about you. And when you uncover that, so failure means I am, rejection means I am, then you've found your undercurrent belief and your crux of what it actually is, because it's not the failure. It's that you've classified the failure to mean, for me, it's you're not good enough. The rejection is I'm not worthy. And we go into these layers. The other thing to note with the fears is, and beliefs really, is we will only ever get triggered into a reaction or react to something if unconsciously we believe there is truth to it. So again, to the example of someone who's not important, or say if someone came to me and commented on my intellect, I'd be like, okay, I'm strong in my awareness of that, where if they were to say I'm the stupidest person on the planet, it'd have no charge because I know it's not true. Whereas if they were to say, one that's always got me is like, you're very reserved or shut, like I can be quite held back when people meet me. Boy, does that have a charge for me, because it's undercurrented right back to my childhood of what I deemed to be a criticism and a rejection of who I am. And every time that comes up, it will charge, nowhere near what it used to. I used to get told to smile all the time, and that really did it for me. Now I'm like, I'm not smiling for you. I'll smile for myself. But because there's some truth to it, there's still some wounding and some unveiling to be done in that. So there's charge. So, and this is our biggest opportunity to understand where we're still believing things are true. Because if we did not believe it was true, we would not react. It's as simple as that. You take the charge out, and you'll notice when you move through healing specific wounds, the charge just gets less and less and less over time. And you start to notice that people will say the same things and you don't react the same because it's not hooking you in the same way. And so if you really want to get to the skin of the fear and the undercurrent of the fear, reflect on all of the ways that you get triggered in this. So say if your fear of failure comes up in a really specific area of your life, what's the reaction? What are the trigger points? Is it something someone says? Is it specific environments? What are they? And how do you react in them? Because the answer to that is really what you're believing to still be unconsciously true. And I say unconsciously because this is what we need to bring up, is the unconscious layer of what drives our fears and our blocks. So just asking yourself, for me to be reacting in this situation, and by reacting, I don't mean like externally having to react. I mean being charged by it or like, annoyed or anything, or sad or anger, whatever. For me to be reacting to this right now, what have I made this situation mean about me? And for me to be reacting to this now, what is the fear? So if someone was to say about the smile thing and the reserve thing, or quiet will trigger me as well. Because there's a belief in there, and my attachment to being called quiet, reserved, all of that is that I am not a worthy person. It's the rejection. It goes into, oh, they don't like me, but they've never said that. That's in my head. And this is where we uncover what we're really avoiding. The other dynamic to pay attention to is the fact that whatever we fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we hold the fear of it, we are focused on it, and naturally, we will draw it to us. So by avoiding failure, which is literally impossible, FYI, by definition, we have already failed. Because if you don't try, you've already failed. You can trick yourself into believing that there was other reasons as to why you pulled yourself off from going for something that you didn't want, because that is the way the egoic mind wants us to think. But if you didn't show up to something you wanted to because you were afraid of failing at it, you've already actually failed. Like if a runner was to show up in a race and miss the gun completely and just stand there, did they win or did they fail? They failed. They were still at the race, but they didn't go. It doesn't matter. You either play in it and fail, or you don't play in it and you've already failed anyway. So it's self-fulfilling because what you're avoiding happens. And similarly, by avoiding rejection or judgment from others. So as I was saying, typically with this fear, we will put on the mask. Funnily, as I was just talking about this, and now I've just realized this, the things that trigger me when people say quiet or what reserved, whatnot, they are my mask for fear of rejection. So naturally, we will put a mask on and we will act a certain way, which for me has been that, because we do not want people to reject us. And so we have learnt to put on a way of acting where people can't. Yet the only comments and feedback I ever get from people were about the mask that I've put over myself that I didn't want to be rejected for, but that's the parts that typically get criticized. So we put a mask on so we won't be rejected, but the part that is really not us is what gets rejected anyway. So the mask is almost, because the mask is fundamentally created on fear, we have preempted what we're fearing, which is a rejection. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that when we hold the fear and we adapt our behavior around the fear, what we fear will happen. But, and this is why this is not an easy path, this is by design, because we all have our wounds and our fears and our limitations that we come into this existence to work through, because there is, call it light on the other side of the shit. It is our evolution. It's the wounding that we chose to unwind and work ourselves through so that we can realize more and more of our soul and ourself. So whenever we pull the fear towards us, which inevitably we are doing by avoiding it because it will come, it brings it towards us. And what we need to be able to do is have an awareness that it is there, because ultimately the only path through creation and manifesting and alchemy and taking the soul path, heart-led path, whatever you want to call it, is through fear. It is facing the limitations, the fears, the blocks, like head on. And by doing that, so by almost setting our way of operating, so for me, the fear of rejection, it continues to bring situations into my life that will bring up that fear. And that is because I need to work through it. And as I said, the more you go, the less charge your wounds will have. And that is the point. But life will keep throwing your deepest fears, blocks at you in situations because you are meant to lean into them and to work through them and move through them. So, and just to really finish it off, there really is no other way other than through, which is why awareness and really breaking it down to see how silly fear can really be. Because it's ultimately just trying to protect us from something that might have happened in the past, but through the protection of it, it's already making it happen anyway. So you almost have a, like, that is really like, kind of got a choice here. You can go one way and yeah, you might fail, but you're already failing going the other way anyway. So, and with everything, it's always baby steps, taking one step at a time to move through these blocks and these fears. And really working with that tension and kind of moving forward from that. So anyway, I hope that breakdown was helpful, and my little realizations of why the parts of me that are criticized the most are funnily the mask that I put over me to not be rejected. It's such a, the mind is just very interesting because it was never me being rejected. It's the mask I put in place in response to a fear of rejection, which is making me be rejected. So yeah, that is the dichotomy of this. Anyway, see you.